People at the stadium that morning thought they were watching just another high school graduation. Smiling families, proud parents, waving banners. But no one noticed the janitor standing alone in the far back row, gripping a wrinkled bouquet from the grocery store. No one except a United States Marine Corps captain who froze mid-stride as his eyes locked onto an old, faded tattoo on the janitor's forearm. A tattoo only a handful of Marines in the world carried. What happened next would shatter the quiet ceremony, reveal a truth the janitor had kept buried for nearly 2 decades, and change the lives of his twin daughters forever. John Mercer never wanted attention. He considered it something reserved for other people, people whose lives hadn't blown apart in a single moment. For 18 years, he had lived the simplest routine he could manage: wake up at 4:30 a.m., make pancakes for the twins, drop them at school, head to the community college where he worked as head janitor, scrub floors until sunset, and fall asleep on the couch he pretended was comfortable. But today wasn't routine. Today his girls, Lila and Avery, were graduating. His babies. His whole world. He took the day off, polished his only pair of decent shoes, and arrived early enough that the dew still clung to the stadium seats. He held the cheap bouquet tighter than he realized, knuckles turning white, as he chose the last row where no one would question why the janitor was attending a ceremony he wasn't scheduled to clean. The twins had done everything he'd once dreamed for himself: honor roll, athletic scholarships, strong, bright futures, but he had never told them the truth about the tattoo hidden beneath his sleeve. To them, he was simply Dad, the man who smelled like pine cleaner and warm pancakes, the man who attended every school play even if he had to sit in the back with his mop bucket. They didn't know about the Marines. They didn't know about the fire, the desert, the explosion, the brothers he lost. And they didn't know why he'd left the service so suddenly, or why he never spoke of their mother except to say she was gone long before you remember. As the brass band started tuning, John felt the old anxiety clawing up his chest. The crowd buzzed with excitement, but he felt like a ghost moving through a world that had kept turning without him. He forced himself to breathe, to stay grounded, to watch for his girls when they marched into the stadium in their blue gowns. The moment he saw them, side by side, identical smiles, identical dimples, he felt something hot rise in his throat. All the nights he had eaten ramen so they could have proper lunches, all the extra shifts, all the moments he'd hidden tears from them, suddenly they were worth it. But just as he allowed himself to relax, he noticed movement on the field. The Marine captain, young, sharply dressed, the kind who walked like every step had purpose, had stopped mid-stride. His gaze was locked, unblinking, on John. Or more precisely, on the tattoo peeking from John's sleeve, a scorched eagle's head surrounded by coordinates, and the faded letters. FAD Unit 7. The captain's jaw tightened. Recognition, and something close to shock, washed over his face. John stiffened. He instinctively pulled his sleeve down, heart thudding. How does he know that emblem? That unit? That symbol wasn't common. Most of the men who bore it weren't alive anymore. The captain took a step toward him, then another, boots crunching against the gravel. "Sir?" he called up quietly, but firmly. "What did you serve?" His voice wasn't curious, it was demanding. And John Mercer, who had spent nearly 2 decades trying to outrun the past, knew in that instant that it had finally found him. Captain Elias Rourke wasn't the type of man who hesitated. In his 10 years of service, he had commanded platoons through storms of sand and fire, earned medals he kept hidden in a drawer, and delivered news to families whose faces haunted him at night. But the sight of that tattoo had made his breath catch. The ink was unmistakable. Fallen Angels Division 7, a covert Marine reconnaissance unit disbanded after a catastrophic mission in the northern desert nearly 20 years ago. A mission every Marine still whispered about. A mission where only one survivor was ever officially reported. That survivor was rumored to be dead. But there he stood, a janitor in worn shoes and a borrowed tie, trying to disappear into the crowd. Elias approached the bleachers slowly, as if any sudden movement might cause the man to bolt. "Sir?" he said again, softer this time. "Please! I need to know your name." John swallowed hard. "I'm nobody," he murmured, eyes fixed on the field. "Just here to watch my girls." Elias shook his head. "No, sir. You're not nobody. You're John Mercer, aren't you?" When John didn't answer, Elias added, "My father served with Fallen Angels Division 7. He spoke about you once. He said you saved his life." John's breath left him. Memories he'd buried under layers of silence surged up, his squad pinned down, the deafening blast dragging two men through smoke thick enough to choke on, hearing their pleas turning into choked sobs as the sand around them turned black. He never wanted his daughters to see him as anything but the man who tucked them into bed. Not the ruined soldier who carried ghosts. "Your father didn't make it," John said, voice breaking. "None of them did. I tried, God knows I tried." Elias's eyes glistened, but he didn't look away. "Sir, you survived. And you didn't run. You fought until you couldn't stand. My father told me that before the end, he saw you carrying two wounded men even though your own leg was bleeding out. He died believing you were a hero." John bowed his head, overwhelmed by a wave of guilt so old it felt welded to his bones. "Hero? No. I was the reason they were there. I was the reason." "You were a soldier," Elias interrupted gently. "A soldier who made sure others had a chance to go home. That's why I joined the Corps. Because of what my dad told me about you." Before John could speak, an announcement boomed through the stadium. "Will the family of valedictorian Lila Mercer please stand for recognition?" And suddenly the entire crowd was turning. Cheering. Clapping. The twins scanned the audience, searching for him. John froze like a spotlight had pinned him to the bleachers. Elias's voice cut through the noise. "Sir, go down there. Stand for your daughters. Let them see who you are." John's throat tightened. "All they know is the janitor who raised them. That's enough." But Elias shook his head. "No, sir. They deserve to know the whole man, the man who survived hell so he could raise them. The man whose courage saved my father. Don't hide anymore. Not today." For the first time in years, John lifted his chin. He took a deep breath and stepped into the aisle. The crowd seemed to part around him. For once, he didn't shrink into the background. He moved toward the front, bouquet trembling in his hands. As he reached the barrier near the stage, his daughters finally saw him. Their eyes lit up, faces bursting into radiant smiles. They waved with a joy so fierce it cracked something open inside him. And the moment he raised his hand in return, Elias Rourke, the Marine captain who carried the legacy of John's past, stood behind him like a silent guardian, saluting the man he believed was gone forever.